Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature successful business leaders, authors, top law firms, green energy companies, and more. Today, we're joined by the author of The Little Red Book, a guide for aspiring entrepreneurs, beginners, and small business owners, Jonathan Clark. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matthew, I appreciate it, man. How are you today?
Oh, fantastic. We're glad to have you here. And before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when they've gotten past their security. That's where CyberLynx intrusion detection comes in. With our 24/7 security operations center, we monitor your computers, networks, and cloud accounts using a combination of AI and highly skilled cybersecurity technicians to detect any signs of attack or intrusion. So if a bad guy gets past your security, we'll know right away and be able to kick them out. Find out more at cyberlynx.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Jonathan, all right. So your book, which I just finished reading yesterday, fantastic.
Awesome.
I love it. The great color really stands out. So The Little Red Book. First of all, the title, I got to ask, what was the inspiration for the title? And also, what inspired you to write a book?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matthew. I think the title, I wanted something a little catchy, and also just to let people know it's like more of a comprehensive guide where it's not this, this thick 300-page document. Because my target audience, right, is really for people that have thought about starting a business and for whatever reason hadn't done so yet, or they've recently got started and they've jumped in deep, right, and they're starting to drown a little bit, or for people that have been in the business world for maybe the past 5 years or so and just kind of have hit like a plateau and just looking for that next level. So I just wanted to kind of make it clear, like who's this for, and just to be a little bit catchy on the title.
Yeah, no, I love it. So in your book, let's just, go through here. I mean, you kind of walk people through, I mean, honestly, from kind of start to, I don't want to say finish, because that's not true, but you really help them out with the kind of the beginning stages and on through into growing and becoming a successful business. And I think you do it in a really nice way to where it doesn't come off like an MBA textbook, which is nice because that's a lot to get through, but it is kind of the fundamentals in an easy to grasp, guide. So I guess the real question is kind of why and how did you come up with this, and like what was it that drove you to write this particular book?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I had a few fellow business owners and friends and things like that, and they had recently written some books a couple years ago, and it kind of dawned on me like, wow, why can't I write one also? And then I initially thought about, well, what would I write about? And it's kind of like everybody starts there. It's like I don't know what to sort of talk about, and then I realized I was naturally answering people's business questions, in my sphere of influence. And so then I got to thinking, what if I could use my gift of teaching to kind of make, like I said, a foundational principle or a guide where somebody can go and learn the basic concepts of, skills or character traits that they may not have, that they may be missing. So that was kind of the way that I started. And so what I wanted to do is just make it, very concise for people with attention span, right, they can swallow the book, right, and it's in whole and don't feel like it's like you said, it's an MBA kind of thing, because that sometimes that may scare some people and whatnot. But I think one of the things I realized is that even for myself, I kind of took my own experience of like there are a lot of successful people, but I think there's two types of people. There's people that have the ability to help you, and the know-how, and then there's people that actually have the time and the access, right? And so it's hard to find like a combination of both, because there are successful people, but you only know of them through YouTube and through, other media sources. And then there's other people that you have access to, but then they may not have the business knowledge that you need. So,
That's a
so I was
great
like, I
point.
was kind of, yeah, I was kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place. And I said, man, I don't know if something like this exists. I kind of did a little bit of search, and they're great books, but then I don't think there's like a very concise guide. And so that was kind of where I wanted to start and really showcase, what I want to bring to the market. So
Yeah, well done. And I think it does exactly that. So I think you achieved your goal there. So
mhm.
let's talk about your background. For those people
Sure.
who aren't familiar, what's your background?
Yeah, so Matthew, I'll give you a brief synopsis, and then just kind of, I guess, the story behind it is always the interesting part.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
right now I run a seven-figure, a very dynamic, small growing architecture and engineering company. So that's my background by training and education, and really that story actually came from my mother. So I grew up very poorly in a small city, a small town actually in Alabama. I don't know, the town probably was like less than 10,000 people. And at one point in time, like I said, one point in time, my brothers and I have younger siblings. We all used to like actually sleep in the same bed, man. It was pretty rough. So my mom, until recently, maybe about a decade ago, actually attained her own home. But at the time, we were renting, right? So I kind of grew up where my parents rented a house, and so as a young child, I don't know, man, maybe about 6, 7, 8. I was just I wanted my mom to be happy, and that was all she talked about, was like on her own home one day. So one day I told her, like, I'll build you a house one day. That's kind of, I remember that.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I went from there, man, and went to high school, and then my high school teacher noticed that I had a knack for like the sciences and the creatives, and so then he said, hey, man, you may want to look into this thing called architecture or engineering, and I mean the rest is history, man. So I went to college and did that, started working in the industry, and then realized, I want to do something that where I could kind of navigate those waters myself and bring the exact value to the market that I wanted to. So then I actually reached back out to a couple of colleagues that I went to university with. This was back in 2015, and told them what my plans were. Reached out to about maybe 40 people, man, and then a handful of us got together and said, hey, let's do it. So we actually started our company back in 2018. So I've been running that. Started from ground zero, man, now to a seven-figure business, which is, I still think it's amazing what, in short amount of time, what we've been able to accomplish.
That's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
in just a handful of years. I mean,
Yeah.
what's a like 6 years now? 5, 6 years?
Yeah, about 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations. That's quite a
Appreciate it.
that's quite a transition. I mean, I was had a similar backstory where we grew up
Mm,
7 people, 5 siblings, kind of poor in a trailer in
mm,
Pennsylvania. And so that transition from, those humble beginnings to, starting and running a successful business, it's a big shift. And
it
I,
is.
I think it's funny because I was talking to somebody, and I think it was the founder of MapQuest. That's who
Mhm,
we had him on the podcast, and a great guy. And one of the things that he had said was that it's funny because you always think that you don't have any information to give, any guidance,
mhm.
right? So you're
Yeah.
busy doing your thing. Let's say you're, I don't know, year one. Let's say if in the
Mhm,
first year of starting your company, somebody who was just starting out came to you and was like, hey, now, obviously, you're not some, multi-billionaire tycoon who can tell
Yeah.
them how to get to that level. You at least tell them that story. But you have so much experience that they don't have that,
Mhm.
already. And I think people often, kind of, miss that. I know I certainly did.
Yeah, I think people tend to downplay the value that they bring, and I was reading another book the other day, and it kind of talks about that, and it resonated with me because it's like, to be considered an expert, it just means you know a little bit more than the next person, right? It doesn't mean you know everything, because I doubt anybody would ever get to the point where they know everything, but an expert is someone that knows just a little bit more than the person that they're trying to guide. And so, if like I said, I've been in business for 5 years, so really my expertise is for those that are trying to be where I am now. So it's everybody that wants to start, hadn't started yet, or hadn't hit that 7-figure mark yet. So that's my value to the market, right? And I'm following the people that are above me, right, which are those billion-dollar tycoons. So it's a forever evolving situation. And I think people should not downplay their experience and their history and the things that their testimonies and their stories, because it's put in place to help someone that's behind you, basically.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. Yeah, and I totally right. I think people, kind of underplay it. No, I
Hmm.
gotta ask, you
Sure.
mentioned early on, wanting to build a house for your mom, and
Yeah.
that kind of inspired the whole architecture thing, right? I mean, or that tied in beautifully.
Yeah.
Where's that project now? Can I ask?
Yeah, so it's still ongoing.
That's great.
We're in the process of like discussing. Like I said, she like, about a decade ago they bought a home,
Oh, okay.
but it's not like her dream home, right?
Right,
So we're in the
right.
process of like designing and talking
Design
through
it. That's all.
dream home.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So that's like I think once I actually accomplish that, I feel like I'm like, yeah, I think I can wrap it up now.
Yeah, I think I can wrap it.
Yes.
I mean, well,
Yeah.
that's huge. Just as a kid to have that that thing, and then it takes so much effort and time and everything. That's a massive accomplishment, and so cool to see to somebody go from that as a child with making that kind of statement, and then finally, I don't want to say making good on it, but actually accomplishing something of that magnitude
Yeah.
with their life and giving that to their mother. That's a freaking awesome story. So I do want when that day does come, I'd love to have you back on the show, and we can
Absolutely.
I'd love to hear how that story plays out. But that's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah,
Very cool.
absolutely. I think it's very incredible. I don't believe anything to be coincidence. I think it's very incredible how things come back full circle. And I've had several other things in my life play out like that, where it just comes back full circle.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you. So in the book, you give a lot of really great kind of solid foundational, fundamental, important advice. And I got to tell you, one of the things I found to be most interesting, let's say, about learning from books versus experience is
Hmm.
it is so much cheaper when you read the book and you're like, yep, okay, you almost take it for granted. And then the second you make that mistake, you're like, really? That cost me so much. It's so expensive, so expensive. And you're like, you knew, I mean, you'd read it several times, you learned it in
Yeah,
school, you learned it someplace, but I chose to learn it the hard way. So I love that your book kind of teaches, gives you all the kind of fundamental stuff. But I'm going to get to a point here, and
sure.
actually a question. So with all of that great foundational stuff, what
Hmm.
would you say is kind of the takeaways you would like the reader or the young entrepreneur to walk away with? What is your favorite advice, let's say?
Yeah. Wow, that's a great question. I think honestly, one of the main takeaways I would like people to get from the book is to just continue to expand on your knowledge base. Understanding comes from the accumulation of knowledge, and wisdom comes from the application of understanding. So, that's just a very solid starting point. And, a lot of people that go through university, et cetera, right? Like we sometimes stop our learning there. And it's kind of like, yeah, it's like, this is just a appetizer. And so like my goal is to help spur up a new sense of forward thinking, and always having that longing to just know more and be better and develop, whether that's a skill set or character trait. Ultimately that's what I want people to kind of rest their fears through some of the readings, but then also to inspire them to just continue to learn.
I love that. That's sage advice.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned that you started your business with a number of classmates, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we
So
did.
how many? And then I'd like to explore that a little bit, because that's often a very challenging relationship to negotiate. And then, and there's a lot of business lessons in there, in how to do it successfully, how to plan for it to, become
Hmm.
unsuccessful, because no relation, not all relationships last
Yeah.
forever,
Yep.
unfortunately. So if I could, how many partners did you have starting your business?
Yeah. So actually, this is going to sound very crazy. So we actually started out with 9, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Super cool. Okay.
So
Love it.
so yeah, and I do agree with you. Not having, myself, right, not having all the proper guidance and things like that. I'll tell you one thing that helped kind of guide me a little bit. I don't know if you grew up watching this or have watched this, but I watch like every season of Shark Tank, and I'm sure
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of business owners do, right? And that kind of like that just got me in the mindset of like, thinking about how to overcome situations with business, et cetera, and just to do as much homework as I can, but at some point I got to take some action, you know. So we took some action. We started out with 9, and then life happens, right? Like some of my business partner ended up, having families and things like that, and so the business kind of became a little bit secondary, but they're still in the picture. So I say all that to say this: no matter where you are in your business, just continuing to be flexible and to create a business strategy and style around what's going on currently, like in the present. I think that'll always keep the business growing and keep it thriving. You can't The strategy that we started out with back in 2018 isn't just not sufficient for us in 2024 now. So like we've had to continually reinvent ourselves, even though we may keep the same branding and all this kind of stuff like that, but internally we're always updating.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
I think that's really critical. And I think what's really interesting about starting with 9, I think it's a really one, if you've got 9 people that you can get along with really well and
Mhm.
you've negotiated that, I think there's actually some brilliance to that, in that
Mhm.
the power of 9 people. One, some people are going to be stronger in some areas and have more experience.
Absolutely.
Plus, then your network of people. I mean, it's
Mhm.
one thing to start out and then have a number of people that you can call on to help you, get connections and kind of grow your business. If you've got some kind of, let's say you put together a formal advisory board, or you've just got a big network of cheerleaders, that's great. I think the problem that most entrepreneurs have is that we grow up in a country that says there's such a thing as a self-made person, and there sure as
Yeah.
hell is not. There's
Yeah.
no such thing. I don't know where that crap came from, but
Yeah.
it is dookie, and
If
it does not exist. And so I think it's
That's
great
so
that you
funny.
started with 9.
Yeah, that's so funny, Matthew. I think if you want to burn out very fast, like try to do everything on your own. But I do agree. I think like unfortunately that is this like society. I don't know where it came from, why it's glorified, and all this kind of other things, but that's kind of the society that we live in now. But I think the two most well, I'll say the strongest power that I can think of is the power of unity. And
Nice.
if you can, and like one of my things is I highly focus on like leadership mindset and strategy. Like that's my thing. I don't know. It just comes supernatural, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I focus on is like having a team of 9 is to maximize our business, everybody has to play at their strength. And the goal of the rest of the team is to cover the weaknesses, basically. So then like you have this unbreakable chain, like the team is only as strong as the weakest link. I know everybody's heard that, but then like what does that really mean and how you implement that? Well, that comes from having strategy and leadership about helping people discover what their superpowers are and setting wrapping the business around their superpowers so it doesn't showcase the weakness that they may have, and then it's just like a team experience about how do we help each other grow in our weakness while our strengths are at the forefront of what everybody else is see.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our mindset around it.
I love it. So let me ask you, I think I would imagine in something like architecture, it's, getting new clients. I think that's got to be challenging. I think it's challenging like it is for lawyers. I think the same for like
Mhm.
IT and cybersecurity. These are
Yeah.
these are industries where that relationship is so
It-
important.
yeah.
You've got
Yeah.
to choose so wisely that I don't think you're gonna do it based off of some Instagram ad, right? Like you
Yeah.
see it. I doubt it, but it's
Yeah.
interesting because I know times are changing. The way people,
Mhm.
uh, buy things, the way they trust, comes a lot from online. But I'm
Mhm.
curious, in your experience with what you guys are doing, what have you found? And is that how do you do it purely on person-to-person relationship? Have you found that you can do kind of online marketing
Mhm.
and social networking to get clients? What's that like
Yeah.
for you guys?
So I'll tell you what the way that we started, and then I'll tell you kind of again how we're reinventing ourselves based on the data and the goals that we have. So you're right, like in a very professional, technical driven, industry. A lot of it is based on relationship. I'm a strong believer in like the 80-20 rule, and I can really say like probably 80% of our projects come from we just continue to build that network, right? And then we get repeat clients. That's always the best because then your marketing cost of cost of acquisition goes down, and you become more profitable. And then there's that 20% where we're like we just have like kind of I don't want to say random, but just people that we haven't cultivated a relationship. They somehow find us, whether that's our website or a Google search or whatever the case is. And then we just have to have a process to actually nurture them right into our family. So that's how we started, and that's kind of gotten us to where we are now. But looking forward as far as like how we want to grow and the impact that we want to have internally with our team and also externally, right? We realize that what got us here won't take us to where we need to be, and so like how do we pivot? I just actually read a book, Traffic Secrets by Russell Brunson, and the guy who
Okay.
created ClickFunnels. Yeah, so he has a lot of great information in there. And so what I've realized is like part of what I do now, because when I started, I was kind of wearing like a lot of hats, as we all do as entrepreneurs when we first start. But now I really focus on business development, and I love it. But what I'm realizing there's a passive marketing strategy, right? And then there's an active marketing strategy. And so like what I'm doing is setting up my team to help facilitate some of those passive marketing strategies. And that's really like, showing up for events, putting faces with names, reaching out through email, podcasting, hosting event, like just all sort of things where it's like there's no call to action per se, but you're pre-indoctrinating people with who you are and the services and the value that you provide. Because at some point, whatever problem that you solve, they're going to probably have it. That's the reason why you guys are connecting. And so when you're top of mind, you pretty much can close that sale, or what I mean, provide that service to that client. And then there's the other half of it where it's kind of like it's a more targeted approach. So what we do is kind of like we try to think about all of the different clients that may need our services, right? So we're talking developers, we're talking even city and state municipalities, right? There's federal projects as well. So like just all those target markets. And then how do we develop a strategy to actually kind of do like what's called interruption marketing, right? Where it's kind of like we're trying to set the pace and the tone, so that we can plant those seeds that can be harvested later. And in my book, I'm sure you probably saw this. One of the things I teach really is like actually how to turn your competitors into your friends, because that's a cool way to actually start to develop business at a lower cost to you internally. And we've done that and it's gotten us pretty far as well. So
Well, let's dive into that a little bit because it is a fun topic.
mhm,
So just briefly, I mean, we don't want to give away the whole book. I'm just kidding.
sure.
But yeah, let's dive into it. So how do you recommend somebody turn a competitor into a friend?
Yeah, so when you look at the service that you provide, I think one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs do that's a little bit costly is they try to be everything to everybody. And I think it's very hard because that's not like in our nature to want to do less and just do that part better.
Mhm.
And so that takes practice. And so, but once you find out what that is, whether it's one, two, three things that just makes you very uniquely different, and to where you can clearly speak to your value proposition, you have to understand you're part of an ecosystem. And so there's inputs and outputs to that ecosystem. And your competitor, just like you, they're providing services, but they also require services to run their business. And it's like, based on their the way that they've structured their business and how they do their marketing and the clientele that they service, there may be a way for you guys to collectively serve the same client. So what I'm saying is there may, in their value proposition, they may have something or they may do something a certain way. and you may have a service or something that can complement them, where to collectively you guys can charge more, and both companies both companies are able to benefit right from that same client. So just like it's all kind of ways to do that. Or example, as businesses grow, what I've learned is, in order to say yes to something, you got to say no to other stuff. And so as businesses are trying to grow, some of the clients that they used to serve become less profitable now, just because it just doesn't fit the business model anymore. And so, I think naturally we hate to tell people no, or just to kind of, you know what I mean, like let them go into the wind. So I would rather give my previous business to a friend,
That's
right,
right.
and have them continue to be served by somebody I trust. So that's a whole nother topic. You know what I mean? That's a whole deep topic, but I talk about a little bit of it in the book. So
No, and I think that's really smart. I mean, when you're talking about things like architecture, even law, we brought that up. You name it. Most industries, you'll have areas where you specialize in and you're really good at.
mhm.
And if you focus on that, then you can be getting it from, getting referrals from what could
Yep,
be seen as competitors when they're like, yeah, we
exactly.
don't really do that, but you know who does? If you go talk to
Yep,
Jonathan, they do a great job over there because, and you'll be sending them, people
exactly.
because
Yep,
they do things that you don't. Yeah, you can do it, but they do a great job over there. So
yeah.
yeah, that stuff works great. Yeah, that's a
Yeah, and
great advice.
I think it helps out a lot too, because then you become less needy and less salesy, and you actually close more. You know what I mean? You close more deals, or create more business that way. Because like you said, it's really about serving the person or the group of people who you can serve the best, and then everybody else. Like if you know someone else that can serve them better, then it's the law of reciprocity, right? Then
Yeah,
taking place. So
that's great. So let me ask you, in your development of kind of I suppose your transition from your original model to how you're doing things now, would you
mhm,
say in terms of like online kind of social networking, like things like LinkedIn and even things like Instagram,
mhm.
you think that's something that is easily leveraged by, or that small business should be leveraging to to help them grow?
Yeah, I say absolutely. And the reason I say that, I'll back that up with this. There was actually a study done, and there's a rule. Actually, I think Google created this through their data and analytics about the 7-11-4 rule. So if you heard of it, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And it's basically, in order for people to know, like, and trust you, they have to consume so much of your content across, different medias, and like that's the way that people pretty much can judge whether you're deemed trustworthy or not. So that becomes like the starting point of a business relationship. And so with everything like happening over the internet now, like it's very hard to compete if you're not in those spaces, because that's where your clients are looking at to for validation. So not to say that you have to be everywhere and omnipresent and all these things, but I would encourage small business owners and all else to find one platform, whether that's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or something like that, and really just dive deep into how to find those clients, and send a very specific message to them that illustrates who you are, the value you bring, how you serve them, and that you wish good intent and goodwill towards people, and then they'll automatically naturally be attracted to you and want to know about more about what you do, and maybe how specifically you can solve their problem. So that's how it usually works.
I love it. Nope, totally
Yeah.
agree. That's fantastic. So let's go back to kind of the basics, right? You wrote
Yep.
this for the aspiring or the new entrepreneur. They're looking to be, I don't know, let's say they're starting a cookie company, right? They
Mhm.
bake good cookies, you know, fantastic. Um, what would you say is kind of I'd say your go-to fundamental advice, for every entrepreneur in terms of
Mm.
their kind of mindset in it when it comes to entrepreneurship? Because it's one thing to bake a good cookie, right? Your great
Yes,
cookie,
yes.
but it's a whole nother one to turn that great
Into the
cookie
business, yeah.
making ability
Yeah.
into a successful business.
Yeah.
And so from you, what advice would you give them? And I think, because I know that could be huge, right? What I'm asking you
Yeah.
there could be like, well, that's why I wrote the book, Matt. I know. But specifically, let's go with the mindset. Like what is that winning mindset that they should be focused on and working at?
Mm. Yeah, so Matthew, something just popped in my head, and I've said this before, but you kind of triggered it again. Is when I first started business, and when a lot of people start business, they feel like they have to have all of the all the skills, all the know-how, and all these things, and so they really concentrate on on the how and the what. And what I've realized is, and I'll say it this way, in most cases, like the middleman makes the most money. And what I mean by that is the focus should shift not on how and what, but to who. So here's what I'm saying. So if you are if you have certain skills and things and you're great at it, like make a list of the things you're great at. Make a list of the things you're not good at that you would like to be good at, right? And then those are the things. It's like, okay, well, who can I partner with, or who can help me? Who can I hire, et cetera, et cetera. And I promise you, your business will go so much faster. Because what entrepreneurs have to understand is the value of time. Yes, you can learn all those things, but how much time is it going to take you, right? And I think one of the issues is you may have a idea or a certain business that's maybe new to the market, or whatever, and there's a season and a time for everything. So if you waste that time, or if you don't maximize that time and get your business out there, and you learn all these skills, and what I mean, and you come back 5-10 years later, well, things are progressing so fast that there may not even be a need for what you have anymore. So I want to encourage people to not focus on trying to be everything, and just focus on what you're good at, and find out who, right, can you partner with, or who can you hire to fill those gaps for you.
I love it. It's the who, not what, right? Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's such great advice, and just overlooked so much. I mean, that's a
Mhm.
bravo. Totally couldn't agree more, because you're right. You could waste decades learning
Yeah.
everything, and by the time you've learned everything, it's over. It's now it's on to the
Yeah.
next thing. You're like, shit, now
Yeah.
you're always playing catch up, right? It's
Exactly.
yeah,
Yep.
when you could have been so much further ahead. And it's interesting because I just saw who was I just somebody was just talking about how important, and you hear it all the time, how important your first hires are. The first few employees
Yes.
of the business will determine its success. And
Mhm.
and yeah, I mean, I think that's really true, because if you're trying to do it all yourself, you got a
Mhm.
big uphill battle. If you choose
Yeah.
poorly, and now you've got people who aren't strong in areas where you're also not strong,
Yep.
you've got problems. But you bring on the right partners, the right employees who are
Yep.
strong in those areas that you're not strong in. Now you've
Yeah.
got a winning team. So I
Yeah.
like that.
You have something to work with.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
And you got nine partners to work with. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of who, right? Actually,
Exactly.
I get it. So even though when you whittled that down, right, a few of them moved out, you're down to, did you say five? I forget. What did you after
6.
that? Six.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, six. I just think about that for me, like, oh, if I'd have started with six, wow. I mean, how great that would be. And I still, to this day, I had some, oh, we had this financial advisor on the podcast, and one of his things that really helped him build his business was when he finally did a advisory board, right?
Mm.
Not super formal, not paid, just
Mhm.
basically a few of his best clients who
Mhm.
would then be advisors. So basically, he took his cheerleaders, brought them
Mhm.
in, and was like, how can we, and now they had a
Yeah.
they kind of partnered to help build the business. They're like, well, what can we do? And so now he's got
Yeah.
all this. Now they're much more willing to leverage their
Yeah.
network and give you advice on stuff. So I was like, that's brilliant.
That's a yeah. I was gonna say that is such a brilliant, and it kind of goes to like some of the things I speak to in the book. It's just you got to be creative, and I think that's smart, because what he did was he made the marketplace his advisor,
Yeah.
which is like you can't get any like better advice than the person who's purchasing from you.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So he gave one example where he did this. I don't know what it was. It was like a pamphlet, and he'd never done a pamphlet. But he's like, all the other financial advisors do these pamphlets, and they're, he'd see them at trade shows or whatever, or networking events. And he's like, God, they've all got these cool pamphlets. So he builds a pamphlet and he takes it to, they put all this time and effort into it, and they print it up, and he thinks it's gorgeous. He gives it to the advisory board. They shot that thing down so hard and so fast. They're like, this is garbage. They're like, he's like, what? I worked so hard on this. And normally without the advisory board, you just, and you'd pass it out and people were like, it's garbage, right? But now he had these people who knew his product, his services, him. And he's like, this isn't you. And this isn't what you serve. And this isn't why we come to you. This isn't what keeps us.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. So I was like, I got to do that. That's just a brilliant idea.
Having a sounding board, man, is brilliant. Yeah. That is actually awesome.
Really
and I'm sure his business is flourishing now. It has to be.
Oh yeah. That really took him to the next level. That was his next level thing. And I was like, and it makes perfect sense. Because think about it. You could get a few of your favorite clients, a bunch of them, and they write a Google review. Great. Okay. And that's basically what people do. Okay, cool. But you could ask them to be on your advisory board. Now they're flattered that you would want their advice on stuff, because everybody loves giving their opinion, right?
Exactly.
And that you trust them to that level and respect them, and you want them on an advisory board. It's just freaking brilliant. So
And you know what, like earlier we were talking about full circle. I mean, just also think about that, right? There's a vested interest in his success, because I'm sure they're still buying from him.
100%. They don't miss one opportunity to buy and tell others to buy, because they're invested. It was a brilliant idea. I was like, I really got to do that.
I'll put that strategy in my next edition, man.
That's right. The next edition's got to be in there, man. That's a good one. That's fantastic. Well, I tell you what, Jonathan, this has been absolutely fantastic. And I think we could do this probably all day and all night, really, because this is like my favorite topic. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you, where they can get your book? So
there's a couple of different sources to find out a little bit more about me. So I'll give you my personal brand, because I do some coaching and things like that as well. So if you go to John Clark, Jon Clark, CLARK official.com, you can find out more about me there. The name of my architecture and engineering company is Community Solutions by Design. So you can just Google that and we'll pop up. As far as like social, I'm pretty active on Instagram, actually. So it's john.clark92. You can find me there. What else? Those are the main. What's that?
Your book.
And my book. So you can find my book actually at my personal brand website, which is johnclarkofficial.com, or you can go on Amazon. It's actually on Amazon as well. So you just type in the title, you can find it there.
Fantastic. Well, John, it was an absolute pleasure. I can't recommend your book enough. I hope everybody goes out and gets a copy, because it's just a great read. So thanks for coming on, John.
Yeah, Matthew, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.